You know, there is no way I'm going to be able to talk about this without this being way too complicated. Ah well, let's give it a shot anyway. Hello again everyone and welcome back to the Underground. Today I thought I would answer a few direct questions we've gotten regarding how to set up a TOC in a box. What is the most condensed way that you can put a bunch of radios, computers, and all the hardware you'd need to actually build a tactical operations center in the most compact way possible? Now, right up front, I want to say there's no perfect way to do this. This is just what I'm using for now. And the usual disclaimers of this is probably not going to work for everybody. But cutting right to the chase, this is what I've kind of settled on for now, and it works really, really well for what I need to do. Now, I will say right up front that this is not for the faint of heart. This is really hard to explain, and I'm not really great at explaining it. So the best way that I've found to actually describe this is to take a trip with Dante down to the 7th level of PowerPoint. That's right, if you spend enough time with PowerPoint, you live long enough to see yourself becoming the enemy. But anyway, this graphic outlines the basic architecture of how I have things set up. Now, right up here at the top, the main meat and potatoes of this system is a mini Wi-Fi router. Yeah, I know this is going to bug a lot of people when it comes to emissions control and things like that, but just bear with me for a moment. First and foremost, everything that you see here can be done with cables. I just prefer the mini Wi-Fi router for a couple of different reasons. Mostly because it makes everything a lot easier to use. The problem with a lot of this radio stuff and writing reports and working in kind of like an office environment out in the field if necessary, one of the problems with this is death by cable, right? I don't want 15,000 cables running around the place, potentially offering up more vectors with that moisture and dirt can get in. It is really, really frustrating. So I've kind of gone to centering everything around a little mini low power Wi-Fi router. And this means I can have 3 main connections to this router. I can have a Raspberry Pi connected to the router either wirelessly or through a small jumper cable, which is what I'm using. And I can also connect my computer wirelessly to it so that it's, because it's a Wi-Fi hotspot. I can also connect multiple computers to this, and now you start to see how the staff functions come out. I can tell everybody to just bring their laptop or bring a tablet with them, and they can connect to this Wi-Fi access point and have access to a share drive, right? We can also bring along a portable printer and map a portable printer to the share drive as well, so that everyone on the network can be out in the middle of the woods or in a situation where they're not using the internet, and they can still print documents, right? So we're building a functional office, right? But without the cubicles and usually in the middle of the woods or something like that. Or in somebody's backyard. It doesn't always have to be completely off-grid. But really, the most important part of this whole arrangement is the HF radio. Now, I know I sound like I'm probably selling the ICOM IC705 quite a bit. I'm not. I have no basis to recommend this other than my own experiences and for one specific feature. The IC705 allows you to connect this radio to a wireless access point. It can also serve as a wireless access point itself, so you can connect and it will emit a Wi-Fi hotspot signal that you can connect to with your phone or your tablet or computer or whatever, and you can just have a direct connection that way. That wireless function is really the selling point for kind of the ecosystem I've built here. And that is because you can connect the IC705 to the wireless router, and that way you can run a bunch of different software without having to change Wi-Fi access points. Now, I tried this initially by using the standard wireless feature to create an access point on the 705. You can go into the settings and turn it on and then connect to the IC705 like it's a Wi-Fi access point. Very easy. You define the password and all that kind of stuff. There's many tutorials showing how to do that. However, when you do that, you eliminate the ability for that tablet or computer to connect to anything else. It's got to stay connected to that one Wi-Fi access point. Now, you can use multiple Wi-Fi cards if you want, but really, one Wi-Fi access point means one connection on your laptop for the most part. This is limiting because you're not able to connect to, say, a Wi-Fi printer or a server like the Wi-Fi router. So by setting things up on the IC705 as a server, now I have one master connection to make, the mini Wi-Fi router. Now I can run my HF radio. I can talk to my Raspberry Pi. I can share files between other computers. I can plug in a hard drive to the mini Wi-Fi router, and now I've got an organic local shared drive to share files with as many computers as can connect to the Wi-Fi router, so potentially many, right? So this is kind of the architecture for how I have things running. I know this sounds pretty complicated, but you guys asked for it, so here it is. This is how I have things kind of set up. And I'll show you the physical arrangement here in a moment. So that's kind of the basic outline for what I've got so far. Again, I don't want to make this super boring or super complicated, but it kind of is, so I'm sorry if it's a little overwhelming. Now, I'm sure a few of you might look at this and say, this is a little bit excessive. This is probably not needed. And I'm sure the screaming question that is being asked right now is, why even bother with a Raspberry Pi? Can't you just do everything from the laptop or the tablet? And the answer is, yes, you can, but I prefer to not do that because I like to run multiple software packages at the same time, and I have found that based on the, unfortunately, Windows offerings, it tends to bog down the laptop, and if I'm using a tablet, I really have very limited USB ports to plug things in. This is why I've offloaded most of this to the Raspberry Pi. So you'll see this in just a moment when I explain what is plugged in where. But for the most part, I've got my aircraft tracking, my ADS-B stuff running on the Pi. So I've got Dump 1090 and a few other programs as well, like SDR Angel if you prefer that, running on the Pi instead of running on the laptop. This saves me a lot of, CPU power that I can use for other things like running my HF radio. So I'm running a lot of the heavy lifting stuff on the Pi. I know that's less than ideal. Pis have far less capabilities than people kind of make them out to be, and it's probably not the best idea to run the Pi very intently like this, but it's working for me right now, so that's kind of what I'm using. If you so choose, you can also run a TAC server on that Pi as well. Again, more options if you so choose to do that. I don't really use that so much, but it's there if you want the option. Now, when it comes to the tablet or computer itself, really we're using this in a couple of different ways. We're using this as the control head for the IC705, but we're also using it to control the Raspberry Pi as well. And since I have Dump 1090 running on the Raspberry Pi, which is connected to the Wi-Fi router, all I have to do is open up Plane Plotter on this Windows PC, and that way I'm just viewing the data that the Raspberry Pi is pumping out to the server. For some of you out there who've gotten really down into the weeds of this stuff and you've set up a Plane Plotter kind of arrangement, you might find that running Dump 1090 and Plane Plotter and an SDR scanning utility or something like that all at once on one computer kind of bogs you down a little bit, depending on the specs of your computer, right? I know for sure, without a shadow of a doubt, if I were to use a Panasonic Toughbook or something like that, I cannot by any means run Plane Plotter and my IC705 software, my remote control utility at the same time. I just can't do it. It's just too much demand for that, underwhelming CPU. So by doing things this way, on the laptop, I can have my 705 running. I can have Plane Plotter running, which is just viewing the raw data coming over the server there. And I can also run something like Microsoft Word or PowerPoint if I'm trying to do a briefing or something like that. I can do all of this on the same device. This is super groundbreaking, and it may seem to be really ridiculous to even talk about it, but, this really does help quite a bit. And jumping back to the Raspberry Pi, because there are multiple USB ports, I can have multiple SDRs plugged in using multiple utilities to control that. So I can scan a bunch of different things. I can do ACARs, I can do HF data link kind of stuff. I can do all kinds of cool things if I need to using the Raspberry Pi and feeding that data over that Wi-Fi router to the main laptop, which is doing other stuff. One of the main goals for this is to have as much automation as possible and to make it as easy as possible for me to run this basically by myself. Another major consideration for me personally is the ability to bring other people in. So if somebody shows up with their laptop, I can put them to work by connecting them to the share drive, connecting them to the printer, connecting them to all this stuff, and they can start helping me out doing different things. If they've got Plane Plotter, all they've got to do is double tap that icon on their screen and they're in. It's all automatic. So enough PowerPoint for now. You can kind of look at this and see how I've got things arranged a little bit better if you want. But let's jump right to the desktop and let me show you how a lot of this stuff comes together. I thought today we would just talk about the hardware and some of the logic that I have kind of arrived at regarding how to set up a portable operations center. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say a tactical operations center or a TOC, it would be really good for you to check out our original video on the topic called the Tactical Operations Center. This kind of highlights how military TOCs work, along with the reasoning behind why you might want to use one or why you might need some of the gear contained in this box here. This is not going to be for everyone, but for those of you who are kind of nerdy and like to talk about the real intricate details of how a lot of this technology is set up, this is going to be for you. So again, not really for beginners, but this is something that is very much neglected in the sort of tactical community these days. So I thought I would show some of the things that work, or in this case, don't work for me. And that's what we're going to be starting with. We're going to be starting with something that I would consider to be the very bare minimum, because this particular setup does not work for me. The reason it doesn't work for me is because it's too small. I was trying to go for a few somewhat arbitrary criteria. I wanted to have a one-stop shop, one-box TOC. A whole communication suite, a whole briefing suite, a whole information and intelligence processing center that is contained within one single case. Turns out this isn't the option, because this case still needs the laptop itself, and it also needs a solar panel to go along with it. So not everything fits in this box, which is why I'm going to be upgrading to a larger box here in just a moment. For now, I wanted to show you this just in case you might find some use in it. Speaking of those criteria that I wanted a box that could serve again as a one-stop shop for everything, but I also wanted it to be light enough to be carried by one person in one hand. That's kind of the criteria that I wanted. It would be nice if it also fit inside a rucksack, which is why I went with this Vault 200 size from Pelican, because this does fit in most rucksacks. It's not going to fit in many assault packs, but if you're using, you're really not going to be using a TOC in a tactical environment. Remember, we have 3 levels of warfare: strategic, operational, and tactical. The concept of the TOC for the prepared citizen is really going to be along the lines of operational. You're not going to be kicking doors with this thing on your back. Likewise, you're also not going to be working out of mahogany-lined conference rooms either, with, suits and ties walking around. This is not going to work for those environments either. This is going to be somewhere in the middle, where you're going to be feeding the door kickers information and generally being aware of your immediate area while not exactly being in mortal danger yourself. So again, fitting inside an assault pack is not really a need, but it would be nice if you could take this, put it in a rucksack, and then ruck in 3 or 4 miles to someplace, or even longer if you've got more time, so that you could establish an operations center really anywhere you want. With this, I still need to keep my laptop solution outside of the case, which is not ideal, again, which is why I'm upgrading. Now, starting with the laptop itself, what I'm going with for this particular setup is a Microsoft Surface Pro. I went on eBay and got the best, most recent Surface tablet that I could afford, and in this case it is the Surface Pro 5, which is ancient in terms of this particular ecosystem, but it works well enough for me. And I was able to get a good keyboard here with it as well. So that worked out for me. Now for this, one of the main concerns for any laptop system is battery life, and we will get to that in a moment. Surface tablets have never been really well known for their battery life, so this is a concern. You guys also know that I'm also a very big fan of Panasonic tablets, because they can be charged in the field via a 12-volt solar panel, so that works out pretty well. The problem is that it takes a long time. A Panasonic tablet's battery life is double, if not sometimes triple, what this is, and this is not as rugged, and this is bigger. However, this charges a lot easier from a standard, or rather kind of like the new thing that everybody's going with, which is a PD power bank. So a power bank that is capable of power delivery. So we'll talk about that here in just a moment, but I wanted to show that you kind of have to keep the charging cable, which is a smaller apparatus than a whole 12-volt cigarette lighter adapter. you've got to keep that separately with this kind of setup. So that's kind of the computing solution that I've got for now. You can really go with whatever you want, but there are some reasons that I wanted to go with something like this, because this TOC is wireless. So let's go ahead and open it up here and I'll show you what I mean. Now, opening up the TOC here, if you want to call it that, really this looks an awful lot like just a simple ham radio Go kit. And that's basically what it is, with a few modifications, right? If we remember our 6 main functions of a TOC, most of the reasons why you might want to have an operations center involve communications. Communications is really the heart and soul of any operations center, no matter what you're doing. If it's combat stuff or if it's humanitarian stuff, you're going to need communications, which is why a core part of this is the ham radio setup. Now, I've gone with kind of the Gucci solution, which is the IC705, not simply because it's like the Cadillac of QRP or low power radios these days, but because of one specific function, which we'll get to in just a moment when we talk about what's in the lid here. For now, let's talk about what we've got kind of sitting here on the top, which is a bundle of coax. And this is a lot more coax than I'm normally comfortable with carrying. I don't like to carry so much coax because, of course, there's line loss and all that kind of stuff. But you really do need an awful lot of coax if you're going to be going with an antenna system that is like the Chameleon Lefts or lightweight in-fed sloper. Now, I'm not sure if this is the most recent iteration of this. I think they may have upgraded this. I'm not quite sure, but this I like a lot because, again, it is a simple end-fed antenna. It covers all the bands that I need it to cover. It's compact, it's lightweight, but most importantly, you can see here that I've made a little bit of a modification to it, is that I was able to put this inside a dry bag and have the opening right here be the only opening here where the wire comes out. So the coax cable, which is waterproof itself, except for the end connectors, right? These ones I have on here are not waterproof, but one end of the cable is going to be plugged into my radio here inside this watertight box or inside a tent, and the other end of the cable is going to be going inside the dry bag. This is so that I can use this antenna system in the rain. Even in pretty substantial rain, the way that you can have it arranged in a sloper configuration means that all of the connectors here are protected from the rain. Now, there's some argument as to whether or not you should be using your radio in the rain. Certainly not within a thunderstorm if you think lightning might be a concern for you, but really there's been a lot of debate on that. Now, the reason that I wanted to mention this specifically is because this is one of the only antenna systems that I've found that allows me to do this. Because I am rarely operating from the field in good weather. I'm almost always going to be doing this stuff in bad weather, or I'm not going to be operating from the field. I'm going to be operating from a structure or something that I can have a pre-established antenna, and I'm not going to need to use this. So this setup is for when I'm out completely off the grid in a new location and I need to set up an antenna in the rain and keep the connectors dry and keep water from seeping in. This is the only system that I found that'll do it. You could do this with any end-fed system, but this one I like a lot because it works really, really well for me, and I really like that the wire is exceptionally durable. So again, you can use any one you want. Chameleon's a very well-known, very well-established company that have been around doing antennas for a long time. Kind of some of the more pricey options out there, but hey, you know, it's up to you. Again, when it comes to antenna options, like I briefly mentioned, the main idea here is to have a whole comms kit that's ready to go. So I've got my throw line here, I've got a throw bag, so I don't have to worry about any structure, I don't have to bring anything else. I can just use whatever trees or structures are around to place the antenna. However, just being perfectly honest, a lot of the time I'm going to be using pre-established antennas. So I can go onto eBay and get a lot of 40-meter antennas, 20-meter antennas, dipoles, whatever. Waterproof them in such a way that they'll be able to withstand the weather year-round. Place them up in places where I know I'm going to be operating, and just leave the coax there, right? Waterproof it as best I can. That way, all I have to do is go to my listening post or or my little quasi like safe zone, I guess you want to call it that, your bug out site, whatever, and just plug this box, open this box and plug in the antenna right into the radio. You don't have to put up your portable antenna, you can just use one that's already there. If you have a home-based antenna, I tend to not operate from my home so much, but if you do, a lot of ham guys have permanent antennas put up at their house. This would be a good solution for that because you can just use one of these little extensions to plug right into the side of the radio there. So you don't have to worry about putting up an antenna every single time. But again, if you're using an in-fed antenna that's in a sloper configuration, you're going to need more coax because the feed point for the antenna is up in the tree, so you need to have enough coax to reach your radio all the way on the ground. If you were doing something like an inverted V, you could get away with shorter coax. You wouldn't need as much, but for whatever reason in my area, a sloper configuration for this specific antenna works infinitely better than an inverted V. But anyway, that's just personal preference, and it's really going to vary depending on where you are at. We can also see I have my antenna analyzer here. Now, this isn't exactly needed 100% of the time. I just like to keep it in here because, one, it's a very expensive piece of gear. This is a pretty costly investment, this particular one here. So I like to keep it in the place where I know it's going to stay safe from getting banged around. But also because it's occasionally nice to be able to hook the left's antenna up and check your SWR just to make sure that everything's functioning well. It's good to troubleshoot if you're having some problems with your radio. A good way to do that is just to get an antenna analyzer and double check and make sure that it's not the antenna that's causing your problems. But again, not necessarily needed, and there are much cheaper options out there for antenna analyzers. Now, like I mentioned before, one of the main problems that every TOC in the world has is electricity. Power consumption is off the charts for TOCs usually. Now in the military, you've got to worry about generators and stuff like that to run your TOC, but for us here, and considering that I'm trying to stay a little bit more lightweight in terms of consumption, I can't exactly carry a generator on my back everywhere I need to go. Power banks are the way forward. Now, as many of you know, I prefer to build my own batteries in Pelican cases and stuff like that because I can usually in the past I could have done it for cheaper. Nowadays, not so. The lithium market, especially for lithium batteries, is insane right now, and it is literally cheaper per kilowatt to just purchase a bunch of power banks on Amazon or wherever and use it like this. If I were to take every single battery out of here and try to buy them separately, it would cost like twice what this cost on Amazon. And you can frequently find these on sale during the holidays or during some kind of sale event, whatever. So power banks that are capable of power delivery, PD, are what you really want because that allows you to get that high power output to a device like a laptop or something like that. A lot of the newer laptops out there on the market are using either USB-C to charge or they're using some kind of proprietary connector like the Surface Pro does. But as long as your power bank has PD and it has a decently high wattage rating, you're good to go to charge pretty much anything. This is why I like this setup because I can take something like this power bank here, which is a 65 watt power bank. That is the same as charging from a wall outlet for this. This energy cube here charges a lot slower, but it will charge enough to where my solar cycle, so my hours of daylight, can actually recharge this with an appropriately sized solar panel, and I can keep this going indefinitely. One of the big problems you run into with power banks and batteries in general is you're almost always going to be running into a battery energy deficit, meaning your laptop will discharge, maybe you'll use 80% of it during your workday, and so you're down to 20% battery, but you let it charge all during the daytime when you're asleep or if you're on an off cycle or something like that. And even if you have 12 hours of daylight, a lot of times that's not going to be enough time to fully charge your device. And since you're not being able to fully charge your device with a solar panel each day that goes by, your power level is going down. So you might find that if you're lucky, after a week of going only solar, all of your devices are dead and they're all competing for that same solar panel. You want to avoid that if possible, so striking a balance between the right power consumption, the right power storage, and the right power generation via a solar panel is very, very important. And I think I'm getting really close to cracking the code on that because this is a really decently sized battery, 70,000 milliamps, and I'm able to charge this. It takes more than one day to charge this fully, but I don't use very much of it running this TOC. Speaking of total battery life here, if we're talking, we are running the HF radio and some of the other gadgets we've got in here. I can run all of this for a minimum of 24 hours. If I were to switch over and use the alternate battery for the IC75, just click in a new battery, that's a lot more battery life as well. Especially if we're doing something like digital modes, or if we're doing something like JS8 call only, that's a really good way to save a lot of power. I rarely use my IC705 for voice, SSB voice. I'm just not that kind of operator, and I don't find a whole lot of utility in doing that, so I tend to not do that too much. So speaking of the other gadgets in here that make this not just another ham radio go kit, let's take a look at what's inside the lid here. So moving up, we can see that I've got the foam here, which is hiding a lot of stuff. So I just keep this foam in here. Again, this kind of shows as to why this solution isn't great, because I would really like to not have to use this. If I take this foam out and go with no padding or anything here, I can take and put this Surface tablet in here and that'll work, but I really prefer to have a little bit more stability here, just so that this case doesn't get banged around too much and a lot of these connectors don't come loose. So again, I thought I could get away with much less. I thought I could get away with just this, but it turns out I need a lot more. But let me show you what I've got going on here right now. So despite the fact that this is a Raspberry Pi here, one of the absolute core of this system to make the entire thing work the way that I intend for it to work is this right here. This is a mini Wi-Fi router. This allows the Raspberry Pi, my ham radio here, and a few other toys to connect wirelessly to my laptop. So I have this is exactly what it looks like when I'm using it. I have nothing plugged in to my to any of the ports on this device. This laptop here is connected via Wi-Fi to this, and this is connected to everything else. So let me show you how that works. Running from the Wi-Fi router, I have a simple short little pigtail Ethernet cable to the Raspberry Pi. Now the Raspberry Pi has got a lot of stuff going on it, so we'll talk about the software at some point. But for right now, it's running pretty much all of my SIGINT stuff. That's what is running on that. You can do a lot of SIGINT stuff on your laptop, so you probably don't necessarily technically need a Raspberry Pi. I know nowadays Raspberry Pis are getting hard to find. They're kind of expensive for what you get. You can get a cheap beater laptop for a lot cheaper than a Raspberry Pi. But it's what I had. I had this before the whole crisis with the chip shortage and all that kind of stuff. So this is what I use. I think it's an underwhelming experience if you're trying to run some pretty heavy lifting stuff. But I'm able to run ADSB on it, and that's really the main thing that I care about, and some scanning stuff as well. I'm able to run multiple SDRs, or software-defined radios, at the same time. And that CPU power is burning through this little guy here instead of bogging down my main computer. I use something like Real VNC Viewer to virtually control this, to kind of remotely connect to this Raspberry Pi. But again, the main heavy lifting of all the SIGINT stuff is done here with this little guy for now. Now, speaking of the cables running in and out of it, let's talk about what we've got here. We've got our Radar Box ADSB flight stick. This is the SDR that I would very strongly recommend if you're just concerned about ADSB. This is not a general purpose software-defined radio. So if you're trying to track aircraft, this is a good one to go with. But it won't do much else. It just does 1090 megahertz, and that's about it. But I like it because it's small. It allows me to still use that other USB port right here, and I can hook in the antenna over here. So right here is the ADSB X Boost antenna. This is an overpriced antenna, I think. I think when I bought it, it was like $50. So I think that's a little bit more than what most people want to spend on their ADSB setup. But despite its small size and despite me being very skeptical, this is the best ADSB antenna I've ever used. So that's why I tend to use that one. It's the same one that I keep in my little portable chest rig setup, and it fits really nicely here. It's also one of the shorter ones that you can use, not one of those little cheap ones that you get from Amazon when you get your SDR. This is a dedicated one that works very well for tracking aircraft. I also have my Uniden scanner here, just a general purpose police scanner with a small extension so the antenna will fit connected. Now, I haven't done it yet, but I have very ambitious plans in the future to run the output for this scanner into the Raspberry Pi so that I can do some squirrely software stuff with regards to automatically receiving signals and generating text reports from what it hears on the radio. So that's coming down the line, but it's something that's very developmental right now. The other USB port coming out of the Raspberry Pi is just simply a USB-C cable to power the Meshtastic device we have here. Now this is the new hotness when it comes to Meshtastic. This is the LilyGo T-Echo. This is a whole new Meshtastic board. It's a whole different system for using Meshtastic, and it is much, much better than what's been used in the past. So battery life on this is a minimum of 24 hours. With moderate use. With heavy use, it may be a little bit less than 24 hours. With something like ATAC, it's definitely going to be less than 24 hours because ATAC sends a lot of traffic. But for now, I have it plugged in so that when I plug all of this stuff into the battery here, this begins charging. So it's always kind of charging just through the simple USB port there. So giving kind of a generic rundown, let me show you how all of this kind of comes together. Really, the only thing that I need to do is, open the box, pull this piece of foam out, set it aside, and plug in two USB cables. One USB is the power for the Raspberry Pi, so I plug that in. The other one is the power for the router, and I plug that in as well. Doesn't really matter where, they both are able to pull their appropriate amount of power. And all I got to do then is turn my radio on here. My radio will connect to the Wi-Fi access point there, and I'm good. Now I can grab my laptop and go a decent distance away and control everything. I can run from this one laptop. I can run Plain Plotter with JS8 call, with some SIGINT tools running as well. And it sounds underwhelming. It doesn't sound impressive at all. But anybody who's tried to mess around with this stuff knows how difficult it is to get multiple SDRs to work while running really weird and ancient HF radio software as well. That's hard to do, or at least it's easy to do in theory. But if you're trying to do it regularly, simply, and wirelessly, it's not super great. So you can, if you don't want to use the router and if you don't want to use the Raspberry Pi, you can just connect the IC705 to your tablet or computer wirelessly as a Wi-Fi access point. That's easy to do, and you could just do that. But I like having this set up to connect to the Wi-Fi router so that I can run all this other stuff as well. And then I'm free to do a lot more heavy lifting stuff on this computer as well. I can process information reports. I can sit here and type the wire for the day. I can make PowerPoints while all of this is running in the background. We don't have to sacrifice a whole lot when we offload a lot of the CPU power to something like a Raspberry Pi. So this is kind of the logic that I'm working with for now. I didn't want to lean on a Raspberry Pi. I didn't because I just think that, again, they're kind of underwhelming when it comes to how expensive they are now. I think that it's been hard for the Raspberry Pi to get out of the developmental world and into like real world use. But this does work. It works quite well. And if I wanted to, I could run something like, I'm not running it for this example, but I could run something easily like PyTAC or some kind of ATAC instance running on a server that I could control with this, again, wirelessly. So that's the whole point here is, again, using something that is a wireless technology, using a Wi-Fi access point for communications and things like that is definitely an MCON concern, emissions control, right? If there is a signal being emitted by something, that means that an adversary can potentially receive it, and if they can receive it, they can potentially exploit it. So I get it. It's you always want to kind of reduce your electromagnetic signature, especially if there's going to be some kind of aerial asset trying to hunt you down. But in terms of making steps in the right direction, I think this is pretty good. You could, of course, remove a lot of the wireless capabilities and just run cables everywhere, but I'm trying to use these tools daily. I'm trying to use them in the long term. This is not just a hobby for me. This is everyday life. I'm trying to really get used to and work out a lot of the kinks when it comes to using these tools in a daily, non-hobby manner. And I think this allows us to do it because, as we've all found out, if it's not convenient, you don't want to do it. And if you don't want to do it, you're not going to do it in the long term. So this is really easy for me to just grab this out of my bag, open it up, type away whatever I want to, and all I got to do is plug in a couple of things. Now, when it comes to the case itself, like I mentioned, this is too small for me because there are a few other things that I need to add to this that are not part of the sort of communications infrastructure. There's some other TOC things that you need to kind of be actually functional in terms of being an operations center and not just a radio go kit. So let me reorganize this a bit and I will show you what my newest solution is. Alright everybody, this is what I'm currently using right now. So as you can see, I have upgraded in size to the Pelican Vault 525. Now the Vault series by Pelican is, again, their kind of budget option for hard cases that are allegedly waterproof. Not as good of quality in my opinion as their main line, but this one is just slightly larger in terms of height or depth. I tried this setup with the Pelican 1535 Air and also the Pelican 1510, which are both kind of comparable in size to this, and the Pelican Vault was actually just a little bit better fit, and I'll show you why here in just a moment. So opening up the case, we find basically the same kind of arrangement. I've got the IC705 here. Underneath that spare fabric here is all of my antenna arrangement, antenna analyzer, all this stuff, spare documentation as well. I've got spare notebooks, message book for taking messages that come in over the HF radio. But by and large, the biggest change is going to be the battery. Just briefly shifting upward to take a look at the lid, we can also see it's basically unchanged from the previous version, except I've got a lot more space over here on the right hand side. Now, right here, right now, I've got just a basic Velcro pouch. They can hold cables and spare little bits and bobs like that. This can be removed to make room for other things. So I have tested here an amplifier for the IC705, and it does work. It's not the best arrangement with cables, but it does work. Unfortunately, I recently fried my amplifier working on some stuff that was my own fault. So I've got to get a new amp to put up here to get a little bit more power out of the IC705. But other than that, it's pretty much the same. The biggest differences are power. So before we take a look back at the battery solution that I've gone with, I briefly wanted to mention solar options. Finding a solar panel that will fit inside this case is challenging, especially with all the stuff here in the lid. Now, if I were to remove some of this stuff, if I didn't need some of these sensors or stuff like that, I could make room for a solar panel. But finding a solar panel that works is pretty challenging. So one of the things I did find here is this big blue 28 watt solar charger will fit inside the lid here. If I take this pouch out, it will fit inside the lid here just perfectly, and that will be a good option. The problem is that this is only for charging USB devices, which I'll talk about here in just a moment. Otherwise, I can use a much larger solar panel. This is, I think, a 60 watt panel or something like that. Just a generic, Chinese one from Amazon kind of deal. And that fits right here on top of everything. If I can tilt down just a little bit. So we can see this. This is kind of the arrangement. This will fit all together just fine. But I don't tend to like doing this. So I've kind of come full circle with my expectation management, I guess, because I'm not really able to fit as many things in this case as I even thought. So coming back to the laptop solution, laptop fits in there just fine. This the padding for this pads this. If I wanted to take the laptop out and just use nothing, that will work. Same thing with SOP binder. So if I were to have an SOP binder with a large format version of our GhostNet plan, I can do that. Put that right here, right on top of it. It fits just fine. As far as power options goes, I did not mind using the small USB, or rather large USB power banks to power the IC705, to charge the internal battery on this, and just kind of be okay with only using 5 watts. Most ham radio guys are used to buying or making their own batteries, their own little 12-volt batteries and solar charge controllers and all that, to power these at their maximum output, right, of 10 watts. However, I've been trying using a different solution and it's worked out quite well. And this solution is these EcoFlow River series of portable power stations, I guess is what they're called. Sometimes you'll see them being referred to as solar generators or something like that. Now, this is an interesting solution, and I think I know why it hasn't been used by the ham radio guys. One is cost. They're very expensive, and it used to be vastly cheaper to make your own batteries than it did to buy one of these. That's not the case anymore, but as far as I can tell. But one of the main reasons why this kind of system has not been used to power ham radios is because of interference potential. I don't have a good way to test whether or not solar generators like this produce a lot of interference for ham radio use, but through my own real world testing, it seems to not be that much of a factor. Really, the setup that I have gone with for this is to use a 12-volt cigarette lighter adapter that is capable of pushing, with this particular one, pushes 30 watts and also 100 watts of power via USB-C. So I can plug this in right here to this device and run a USB to DC input. These you can find these all over Amazon for powering drones and stuff like that. Some kinds of LiPo batteries can be charged with a cable like this, and I just plug it right in, turn on the port, and we're good to go. Now the IC705 will be charging, and it will also be able to pull enough power to run at full 10 watts from this device, and it's perfectly clean as far as I can tell. My range is the same with my homemade batteries as opposed to using something like this. I can't vouch for it though, so all I have is my anecdotal experience, so of course your experiences may vary, but using something like this, I can easily plug it in here in the box and then take my 2 USB leads, one for the Raspberry Pi and another for the Wi-Fi router, plug them right in, and I'm good to go. I've just plugged in 3 things and I've got a functional running TOC that is completely automated. So this is an option. Now, of course, there are downsides. This particular solar generator I specifically purchased on sale because it came out with a new model with the intent of making it fit inside the box here. So if I put it back in there, you can see, oh man, this fits perfectly in there. Now, obviously, you've got to kind of kick it out like this if you're in a hot environment so this cooling fan can have space to run, circulate air. But this seems like a perfect solution, doesn't it? Well, it doesn't really work for me. This is not something that I would like to use in the long term because the charging options for this are very limited. Again, this is the EcoFlow River Mini. This is the non-wireless charging version. I got it on sale during the holidays for half price, which is why I got this. I would never buy one of these at full price. There's plenty of sales every couple of months and you can get one of these for very, very cheap. One of the reasons why I don't like this is because the charging options are limited. You can't just charge this with any solar panel. You have to use a solar panel that is capable of putting out power through an XT60 connector. So If you think you can use this charger here with this, you can't, because this only puts out 5 volts through USB-A connectors, and it's just not enough to charge with this. So, if you are so inclined, the reason you might want to use something like this is because it's compact, it fits nice in the box there. It allows us to have a lot more space, and we can take advantage of some stuff, storage space in the lid. It is an option. I'm not going to say I don't use it, because just for my own kind of benchmarks, using this battery, powering all of this stuff, I can run this TOC for 72 hours without question. If I'm wanting to charge my laptop, maybe a little bit less than that, but no problem getting several days of use out of this. Now, again, if I'm going into a situation where I'm not going to have the ability to charge this via the AC plug, or I'm not going to have the ability to bring along a larger solar panel, what I will do is upgrade to the River 2 series. Now this is very much an upgrade. It does fit in here. If I were to remove some stuff like these spare phones, I can just barely fit it in here. You can't run anything with it plugged in, so if you're trying to plug stuff into something like this and then close the box so that it remains waterproof, you can't really do that. You have to kind of wrangle it in a different way. But this is a much better tool here, because you can charge this via USB-C. So I can bring along this River 2, and I can bring along this solar panel and charge it with this panel, which is a lot smaller. It's going to take a long time to charge via USB-C, but it is doable, and I have the same cigarette lighter adapter here. Now, when it comes to interference, I can say that I have noticed a lot of interference from this center USB connector. I have 2 of these River 2s. This one is really noisy through the USB-C right here, so if I wanted to plug, let's see here, if I wanted to plug in this USB connector right to here just like that, it's really noisy, and I get a lot of interference on the radio running it like that. On the other one I've got, it's no problem. So I don't know if I've got like maybe an older unit or defective or something like that, but I just use one of these Chinese grade, Amazon quality 12 volt adapters right into the 30 watt. You don't even need the 100 watt, and right into the 12 volt adapter. You would expect these to be very noisy, but I've tried 3 different ones, and they're not bad. So the ones made for power delivery, PD, are probably a little bit higher quality than your standard low grade ones like this. So anyway, that's kind of the power solution I'm going with. This will power this whole situation for a week, no problem. There's really not going to be a situation, maybe, I don't know, maybe in an extreme situation where I'm trying to set up a TOC in like the winter, where I've only got maybe 4 or 5 hours of sunlight a day, during a week where it's expected to be rainy and I'm not going to have the ability to charge this. But again, we're getting kind of into the really contingent situations, right? So for the most part, this works for me quite well. Going with these solar power banks is kind of an expensive option, or at least it used to be. I was able to get this for less than $200, whereas if I were to buy the lithium batteries that are inside this by themselves, man, it cost me more than that just in parts alone. So we're in this kind of weird economic situation where it's cheaper literally to buy these solar batteries pre-made than it is to actually make them yourself. In the past, it wasn't always that way. I remember a lot of us cracking open modem batteries to get the 18650 cells out of the inside and making our own batteries to run our HF radios from that way. But now, that's still an option, I guess, but it's really expensive. So it's cheaper just to go with something that's not designed for that. Even if you potentially have noise issues. I've been really lucky so far, so maybe the quality on these is coming up. And one of the main reasons why I would prefer the River 2 over this is because of the app. So there is a way to connect this, the River 2, via Bluetooth to a smartphone, and you can manage your power that way. You can do this via the River Mini with Wi-Fi, but it doesn't work super well. I just don't really like the idea of connecting your battery to the internet. Like, why would you ever want to do that? Bluetooth's a good idea though. I don't know why EcoFlow has the Wi-Fi option. Like, I'm really struggling to think of a case where I'm going to be halfway around the world and need my battery box to be connected to the internet. That makes no sense to me. Maybe in a very, very remote use case, but Bluetooth's a good idea because I can sit this outside being charged. I can take this out of the box. I can set this outside along with the solar panel and get a pretty good reading on how long it's going to take to charge and all kinds of data like that. So again, from an emissions control perspective, it's a nightmare when even your battery is emitting some kind of signal. So again, I wouldn't probably use this in every situation, but again, if I'm in a tactical situation where I'm worried about getting struck with a hellfire or something like that, this arrangement's probably not going to be used super much. But anything less than that, certainly for ordinary benign community response for disaster preparedness and stuff like that, hey, this is a good option. But again, it's not an option for everyone. But it's worked out pretty well for me. I've got a lot of capabilities in this box here. You're not going to be carrying this on your back very far. You can, I guess. You could strap it to an Alice frame or something like that and go a pretty long distance. I've tried that with a couple of the Everly stock packs I've got, and it works out really well. I just don't know if that's something that most people are going to be doing. I can't really think of a scenario where you might be carrying this on your back for miles and miles and miles, just probably short distances, or working out of your car. There are good reasons why you might want to go with the smaller option that I mentioned earlier, and that is if you are planning to carry a TOC-like function out into the absolute middle of nowhere and you need a way to keep your radios and your sensitive electronics dry and protected. That might be a better option than bringing this big honking arrangement here. But in terms of day-to-day use, using this as a workspace, this works out very well for me. And you can use the smaller box if you end up upgrading to the larger box. You can use smaller boxes to hold things like your printer, extra batteries, solar panels, stuff like that. Again, kind of goes against my philosophy of having a one-stop shop grab-and-go box, but this is what has actually worked out in real life for me. So hopefully this has been helpful. I know this is probably not something that is going to appeal to most people, but again, you guys asked for what a TOC in a box might look like, and here's what I'm working with for now. Thank you all for watching. Hopefully this has been helpful, and we will see you next time. And as always, bite in the shade.